Recently, I've been building PCs inside old consoles like the PS2 Slim and PS4 Slim. There's something really satisfying about giving broken hardware a second life. But all of those builds had one major problem. They weren't powerful enough to play modern games smoothly. Then I found this broken PS3 for just $10, and this time, I'm challenging myself to build a complete gaming PC inside the original PS3 shell. That means a full-size graphics card, a real power supply, and actual gaming hardware. But I have one rule. I'm only allowed to modify the edges of the case. The exterior has to stay looking like a PS3. And if everything goes according to plan, the final result should be capable of playing the latest games at 4K. So let's get to work. This is the first time I've ever had my hands on a PlayStation 3. And not just any PS3, this is one of the original models. It's big, it's bulky, but for this project, that's actually a good thing. More space usually means more possibilities. The design is also surprisingly unique. The curved body and glossy piano black finish give it a premium look that still stands out today. And compared to the PS2 Slim from my last project, the difference is night and day. That console was in such rough shape that I almost didn't want to touch it. This PS3, on the other hand, has been remarkably well preserved. There are a few signs of age, but overall it's still in great condition with very little cosmetic damage. Alright, enough admiring it. Let's get to the real reason we're here today. Before anything else, I needed to find out whether this PS3 still worked, so I plugged it in and pressed the power button. Nothing. Bruh. No video output. And after a few seconds, the status light started flashing red, which usually isn't a good sign. There's a pretty high chance this console has a hardware failure somewhere. Unfortunately, I'm not exactly a console repair expert, so I can't tell you exactly what's wrong with it. At least not yet. Alright, let's take it apart. Thankfully, getting inside the PS3 wasn't nearly as frustrating as I expected, unlike some Xbox consoles with their endless plastic clips and hidden tabs. This thing comes apart pretty easily. All I had to do was remove 7 long screws, and I had access to the internal hardware. Honestly, I was preparing myself for the worst. A console that's been around for nearly 20 years should be absolutely packed with dust. At least that's what I expected, but the moment I opened it, I was genuinely surprised. It's incredibly clean. Even the dust buildup is minimal, and that's not something you see very often with hardware this old. I seriously doubt someone spent hours cleaning it just to sell it for scrap value. So, whatever happened to this PS3, neglect clearly wasn't one of its problems. After that, I tried powering it on one more time directly from the motherboard. Unfortunately, the result was exactly the same. No display, no signs of life. Things weren't looking good. At that point, there was only one thing left to do. Take it apart piece by piece. If you don't know, this right here is the Blu-ray drive. Back when the PS3 launched, this was actually one of its biggest selling points. Next up is the power supply. And honestly, this is one of the design choices that probably worked against the PS3 from day one. Sony placed the power supply extremely close to the CPU and GPU. Not only does the power supply generate its own heat, but its large size also restricts airflow around the chips that need cooling the most. And that's only part of the problem. Another reason these early PS3s earned a reputation for running hot is the cooling fan itself. The fan blades are unusually thick, which makes airflow less efficient than many thinner blade designs. On top of that, Sony's default fan profile prioritizes quiet operation over aggressive cooling. The fan doesn't really ramp up until the system is already running very hot, often somewhere around 75 to 80 degrees Celsius. To be fair, Sony seemed somewhat aware of the heat issue. The outer shell is covered with ventilation openings designed to help move air through the system. Whether it was enough is another question entirely. After quite a bit of wrestling with screws, cables, I finally managed to remove every major component from the console. Before getting into the main part of the build, I needed to do some measurements first. Nothing fancy, just enough to make sure the hardware I wanted to use would actually fit inside the PS3 shell. Thankfully, that didn't take very long. After a few quick measurements, I realized there was enough room for a mini ITX motherboard. And that's perfect, because it's about the smallest motherboard you can get while still having a PCIe slot for a graphics card. Now, if I decide to use a full-size GPU, things could get a little cramped. But I already have a plan for that. The first step is creating as much usable space as possible. That means removing everything that no longer serves a purpose, including the plastic supports, brackets, and screw posts left over from the original PS3 hardware. The goal is to create a flat surface and maximize the available clearance. After a bit of cutting and sanding, things were already looking much better. At this point, I started placing the components back inside the case to check the fit. And honestly, the results were better than I expected. Everything fits surprisingly well. The layout is clean, organized, and there's very little wasted space inside the chassis. Before permanently mounting anything though, I wanted to make sure all the hardware was working properly. There's no point spending hours building everything into the case only to discover a faulty component later. In my previous build, I used a 250-watt power supply from an old office PC. It got the job done, but it was pretty weak and didn't even have a PCIe power connector for a graphics card. So this time, I decided to spend an extra $30 on a 400-watt Flex ATX1U power supply. It should provide just enough power for the system while still fitting comfortably inside the PS3 shell. As for the motherboard, I'm using a mini ITX board. Since the interior of the case is surprisingly spacious, I can even keep the stock CPU cooler and save a bit of money. For the processor, I chose a Ryzen 7 5700G that I already had on hand. It offers excellent performance without generating excessive heat, which is exactly what I need for a compact build like this. Memory is simple. 16 gigabytes of RAM is more than enough, but the most important component is the graphics card. For that, I'm using an RTX 5060 8 gigabytes. Its relatively short length makes it a perfect candidate for a project like this, where every centimeter of space matters. With the testing complete, it was finally time to start mounting everything permanently inside the case. The first component to go in was the motherboard. Because the bottom of the PS3 shell isn't perfectly flat, I had to use slightly taller standoffs in two positions to keep the board level. Otherwise, the motherboard would sit at an angle, which is the last thing I want. I also didn't want to drill straight through the outer shell just to mount the board. Instead, I used bolts and nuts positioned exactly where the mounting points needed to be. To keep them from moving around, I used a soldering iron to melt the surrounding plastic and lock the bolts into place. Once they were secure, I added a small amount of adhesive for extra strength. After that, it was time to install the power supply. I mounted it on its side, then drilled 2 holes so I could secure it with screws from the outside. It's a simple solution, but it's surprisingly effective. With the major components in place, I moved on to connecting the power cables for the motherboard and CPU. And that's when I ran into another problem. The GPU power connector sits extremely close to the side of the case. So close, in fact, that I couldn't plug in a standard PCIe power cable. For a moment, I thought I was stuck. Then I remembered something that might solve this problem. Let's unbox it. This is a U-shaped 8-pin power adapter. I bought it for about $5, and honestly, it's probably the most practical solution, and maybe the only solution, I could think of for this build. With this adapter, the power cable folds back immediately instead of sticking straight out, giving me just enough clearance to close the case. After that, I wanted to add a proper power button. Not a hidden switch or some temporary solution. A real push-button power switch. I also wanted it to sit exactly where the original PS3 power button used to be. So I drilled a circular hole about 1 centimeter wide. Inserted the button and secured it in place. Just like that, the power button problem was solved. Next, I needed to deal with the power cable. My plan was to use a power extension cable and mount it in one corner of the case. To make that work, I had to trim away a few more pieces of plastic, drill mounting holes, and then cut an opening large enough for the power connector. A little more cutting. A little more drilling. But in the end, it gave me a clean way to route power into the system without ruining the look of the case. And that's it. Everything is finally finished. Now it's time to put the top cover back on and hope everything still fits. Perfect. That sound when the lid clicks into place is such a relief. After all the cutting, drilling, measuring, and problem solving, it's finally come together. And now the build is complete. If you hadn't watched the entire process from the beginning, you'd never guess that there's a high-performance gaming PC hiding inside this PS3 shell. From the outside, it still looks like a normal PlayStation 3, which is exactly what I wanted. Alright, enough staring at it. It's time for the fun part. Let's see how this thing performs in some 4K gaming tests. First up is CS2. And surprisingly, this little PS3 PC has no trouble running it. Even at high settings, the frame rate stays in the 80 to 100 FPS range, which is more than enough for a smooth experience. Next is Cyberpunk 2077, and honestly, the results are just as impressive. Even with the settings pushed to the maximum, the game still manages around 70 FPS. Next up is GTA 5. As expected, performance is a little lower here. The frame rate generally stays between 50 and 60 frames per second, which is still a very playable experience. The biggest downside of this build is the heat, and honestly, it's worse than I expected. The CPU temperature gets dangerously close to its thermal limit during heavy workloads, so while the system works, cooling is definitely the weak point. If I wanted to use this machine long-term, I'd probably have to swap to a more power-efficient CPU or add an additional exhaust fan to improve airflow inside the case. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how this project turned out. What do you think of this PS3 gaming PC? Let me know in the comments below.